Angela. You're the co-owner of one of the most prestigious comedy clubs in Washington, the Laughs Comedy Club.
When I met Dave, he always said, I don't want to do it by myself. If you do it with me, we go to work every day together.
That is so sweet. And you guys have done an amazing job in the last 2 decades, putting up 5,000 plus shows, hosting.
That's crazy. We're booking some international acts this year even. So it's
Wow.
like you're welcoming people not only to your club, but to your city as well. We're having a show next week that's part burlesque dancers, pole dancers, and comics in between.
Laughs has also hosted the NBC auditions in 2019, which I was part of as well.
I stole that show.
In Seattle, we have spaces for specialized comic acts as well. Do you actually pick the comics based on the audience?
You can do comedy and you can be successful, but we are still a buyer for our market, and our
Yes.
market is our club, and our market is Seattle. A lot of people don't know is that Dave fought very hard with people outside the club to get those 3-minute spots for what he considers his comics. Dave goes, guess what? It's my club, and I'm going to do what I want to do.
I did not know I was using stand-up as my own therapy. How would one make a career out of that?
You start by headlining your own local small space where you have that 45 minutes to an hour that you can headline. Then you have to figure out how you're going to make it a career out of it. There are people that truly love going on the road.
Just live comedy.
The greatest asset that we have in our business is people. Everything that we're doing now after COVID, it was a real eye-opener. We need our customers, we need our comics, we need our staff. Cannot be replaced with AI bots.
Did you feel like comedy went back in live
I actually
comedy?
think that live comedy is more popular than it's ever been.
Traditional stand-up comedy sort of on a decline from the comics point of view, and people were doing more of roasts, the tech roast show.
There are unique people, and there's other, like Kill Tony has this like roast component to it. Concept has been around a long time. Any way that you can make people connect on a human level and they can come and laugh and enjoy themselves, let's go for it.
It's a comedian, always a comedian, but life happens.
Living in that nostalgia, you come back thinking this is what it's going to be, and then usually it's an epic fail.
Did you have to like call cops?
We've had people, we had a guy expose himself on stage. We've had people say things that they should not say. I get free speech, I understand it, but you don't want to yell fire in a crowded theater.
Coming to COVID,
There was no live entertainment inside or outside. And some of them didn't even want to come back. You're going to tell jokes in a mask? Like, how's this going to work?
this is a business of hope. But then again, this is also a business where things are not constant all the time.
We lived through the 2007 financial crisis, and I saw the bottom drop out of our business. There was literally a full weekend, and the next weekend, dust.
Welcome, Angela, to Jack of All. I am really honored that I have the time with you today because I've been meaning to pick your brain for a long time. I'm a second generation comic, as you know. My father did stand-up comedy back in the 80s in India when comedy was a very different beast. And we'll talk more about that. But you are one inspirational person that I've met in my time in Seattle. You're the co-owner of one of the most prestigious comedy clubs in Washington, the Laughs Comedy Club, which has a history of about 18 years, 9 in Kirkland, and then close to 10 now in University District of Seattle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you again.
Absolutely. And so such a pleasure to always see you. And I think one of the things that have inspired me to have you on the show is not just in my observation, you've done a wonderful job running a small business and, you know, led a business in an industry which is kind of tough to run business in. I've seen you do that in different times as well. And I've seen you wear 15 different hats in one single night, where you are selling tickets, you're doing security, you're, you know, making burgers, you're introducing comics, you're doing a set, you're helping your husband, who is the co-owner and proprietor of Laughs Comedy Club as well. You're a Seattle native.
Yes. Seattle native. Yes.
Yeah, and I would love to start with that actually.
Okay.
So tell me, how does it feel to be a Seattle native and run a comedy club in Seattle? Seattle itself has gone through such a big transition in the last few decades.
Yeah.
How do you place yourself in this world right now?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, it's great to. I feel honored to be able to be in the city that I was born and raised. I was actually born and raised in Kirkland, and so our first club was the Old Godfather's Pizza that I went to as a child, that we transitioned into a comedy club. So that was surreal. Some of the first places I saw stand up when I met Dave. Gosh, it would have been in 2002, was Giggles, which is now where our club is at. We're now in the Giggles space. Which
And
is
Giggles was
a strip club for a hot minute, for a very hot minute. But it's basically been a comedy club since 1986. So it feels nostalgic and new at the same time, because it's always, the city is evolving and changing, but yet we still have customers that like say, I haven't been here in 20 years, but I've been here before. So that feels good. I love hosting, tourists, and comics are tourists in a sense, because we're booking some international acts this year even. So it's like you're welcoming people not only to your club but to your city as well, and it feels good. Seattle's changing, but I think for the better. It has its ebbs and flows, but I think right now there's been a lot of investment in the city, and I hope we're going to see a return on that investment. It feels good.
And as a small business owner, you feel that things are moving in the right direction for you to feel, supported to continue and, evolve with the business as the industry evolves and, things around you evolve?
I think the city on a whole, yes, I feel supported in the city of Seattle, not only by the city itself, but also by the customers. On a scale of in America, I mean, it's a little hard as a small business owner, because you're hearing people, we're hearing this, reflection about, where will our business be? Right now we're talking about procuring alcohol. We buy, all of our people are very brand loyal, and one of the ways that we make money is selling alcohol. So tequila that comes from Mexico, all of our brands that come from Canada, Jameson that comes from the EU, San Pellegrino, just any non-alcoholic beverages, so we don't know where the business will be. We lived through the 2007 financial crisis. And I saw the bottom drop out of our business. There was literally a full weekend, and the next weekend it was like dust. So we've done it before, actually twice, and then through COVID. So this time I'm more battle ready for this.
Absolutely.
I'm ready for it.
And
I'll just take it as it comes to me.
That's so amazing. And you've been in this business for close to 2 decades now.
Yes.
I feel like comedy clubs, or comedy in general, live comedy, stand-up comedy in general, is a good indicator of how things are moving around, at least in the state or in the city. Because, then you see those kind of comics come up, and then if they're doing well, you see, okay, there's some resonance with the audience that is consuming that kind of comedy. Have you seen, like, for example, my dad, in the 80s, he was doing stand-up comedy, but that was not a single stand-up comedy act. It was actually an orchestra of band playing, getting the tickets. And he was the host who would do comic acts of, say, mimicking famous actors and building sets, or they would call it items. We have sets, right? So
yes, sure.
My style of comedy is more observational, which is based on my experience of, being in India, growing up in India, coming to Oklahoma, from Oklahoma, moving to Seattle, seeing different kind of culture. But for him, it was more of a act. And to act to make people laugh or fill time. And then a lot of different things as the society evolved, jokes evolved, politics around informs comedians and things like that. So what has your experience been in the last 2 decades from live comedy itself?
Well, I think there are still people that do acts that are exaggerations of themselves, that are still working on not always one foot in the truth and one foot in an exaggerated version or fictitious, funnier version of themselves. There are people that are doing true storytelling, that they have a knack for true storytelling. And then there's people that are just, doing straight joke writing, right? Set up punchline. But there has been some change. I just think that more people with social media are able to find something that they resonate with.
I see.
And there are still all those mediums at play. There are still people doing almost like outlandish, weird skits on stage, which, I would almost say like avant-garde. But, when it works, it works. When it doesn't, it's kind of difficult. But we just had somebody recently that was doing that, and I thought, caught me off guard because I'm not used to seeing it, right?
That's fantastic. And I think one thing I've noticed to add on to that is in Seattle, we have spaces for specialized comic acts as well, like, comedy related to sex, comedy related to something else, like immigrants. And immigrants have their own show, and, Asians have, Indians have, and things like that.
Yeah.
But the traditional club, and I've seen you guys do a wonderful job of putting like a, diverse set of comics together based on who the audience is that night. And I think Dave is an expert in that, and you too as well. How does that work out for you? Like, do you actually pick the comics based on the audience, or you pick comics based on their dedication to the art, and you see something in them and things like that?
It's interesting. I think of it as like a layout, like a menu. It should be an easy answer, but it's not. I think of it as 52 weeks. And in those 52 weeks, can we offer something for everybody? And it's a little cyclic too. So I have my spots where I know that I'm going to take a chance on somebody, that they don't have to be famous. Maybe they just need to be funny, but somebody else that we don't have on our schedule, and an up-and-comer, and to take a chance on them. There's not as many weekends that we can do that, but then the rest of the time, it's like a little something for everybody, but it needs to fit in Seattle.
I see.
Like, I can't have somebody there. I always tell people, like, I love what, I wouldn't say love, but you can do comedy and you can be successful, but we are still a buyer for our market, and our market is our club, and our market is Seattle.
Yes.
So some people that might be successful in one part of the country or one area, that's great, but they're not going to be successful here, and we're buying for that market. If I was tone deaf and I just brought in people I wanted to bring in every single weekend, that wouldn't be serving our audience, because I am a 50-year-old woman that is white. And so what I like may not be what someone else likes. So I have to bring in something for everybody and appreciate what they're bringing, because that's what we're a business. I'm not doing it to fulfill my own ego. I have to support my staff and our business.
Yeah.
So you have to, it's a complicated answer about how we find people and what we're looking for, but we try to take a chance on people that we think are funny and up and coming.
Absolutely, and I've personally experienced that. To be honest, I was in Oklahoma for 8 years, where I did comedy, Looney Bins, and every different place that I could find. But then, as you mentioned, the ecosystem did not understand the context of where I was coming from, so I was not funny for them. But when I moved to Seattle, I was looking for a footing to kind of, do it again. And instantly, whenever I got the chance to, I could find the confidence where I saw, yes, the audience connects with me. And that might be because now this audience understands where I'm coming from. They understand Indians. They understand my, context, to be honest. And coming to an important point there is a standard or I would say a framework to graduation as a live comedian or a stand-up comedian, which is like, you think you're funny, your friends think you're funny, right? And then you make them laugh, and they're like, oh, why don't you go on the stage? But then you find out that you have to sign up and you're not going to go on stage for the next 3 weeks. But then you somehow make it on a Monday night or a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night. And then you keep on doing it again and again, again and again, until the organizers or the promoters see you and they're like, okay. And this is exactly what happened with me. I came to Seattle. I started performing at open mics on Wednesdays at Laughs. And I think after the third or the fourth show, I went straight to Dave and I said, Dave, can I, like every comedian would do that. Dave, can I, would I get a spot on Friday? And he's like, who the heck are you? I said, I'm a comedian and I'm funny. He's like, oh yeah, sure, you're funny. And then I thought, I was like, I'm never going to get this chance. But to Dave's credit, he actually saw me perform the next time. And then he came to me and he said, looks like you can come here regularly. And once you do, I will put you on a Thursday show.
Perfect.
And then I did a Thursday show. And he was like, that's good. Why don't you come on Friday? You don't hang out with us on Fridays. Why don't you do that? So I said, I came on Friday, expecting I'd go on stage, and he didn't put me on. But that was good enough experience for me to know what is required on Friday. And then after a few weeks, he was like, I don't have, XYZ comedian, or maybe he saw a lot of immigrant audience members and he was like, just do your regular set, make it 3 minutes, and I'll give you the light. I did it. I felt so nice. It was a good reception on the audience side as well. And then he was like, okay, keep on coming. I came back, 5 minutes turned into 15 minutes, turned into 20 minutes. And I was just like, this is so amazing, right? It gives me so much confidence. But then when I started, my approach was, I know I am funny. Why don't you give me that 20-minute spot?
Yes.
And that's the learning curve that I got out of Laughs. And not a lot of comedy club owners are that patient or that have that kind of foresight to understand, this guy may be funny, and, at the same time, I can place him in my needs of the business as well, right?
Yeah.
Do you see that a lot where comics are just like, you don't put me on and I hate you, you're a gatekeeper,
Yeah,
things like that?
To Dave's credit, Dave's been on not at the club as much. He's been on a medical leave.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't know is that Dave fought very hard with people outside the club to get those 3-minute spots for what he considers his comics, people that he's mentored through the open mic system, through a process. And he would literally get in fights with the headlining comedian. They're like, I only want one person to go in front of me. And we would have 4 people, each doing short sets. And Dave would go, guess what? It's my club and I'm going to do what I want to do. And he would be very protective of what he considered to be his comics. It's a lot of fighting, and it takes a lot of resilience and pressure, and honestly, to be combative. And I am not as combative as Dave, and we have lost that edge, unfortunately, for the weekends that we used to have.
I see.
And I wish we could claw it back, but did it make some enemies? There's some headliners that won't come back because Dave straight up told them, this is how it's going to be. And maybe he has no fear. I mean, in this business, that's what it takes. He just has no fear. And it's bizarre to me that those people don't remember what it was like to claw for a spot.
Absolutely.
On the weekend, a sold-out show. But sometimes we're still able to do that. I wish we had that little spot again, what I call the 5-minute guest set, because Dave, it was almost like a test where you could just say, okay, what can you do with 5 minutes? And if they don't obey, like they go overtime or they go short or they crumble or they fall, just everything, then they're not ready for the next step. But when you see someone shine in 5 minutes, I mean, it's one of the only art forms that has an immediate response, a dopamine rush that you're going to get. You go up, you've told a joke that you have created, that it's not a stolen joke, and you say the joke and everyone laughs. It's definitely a dopamine rush.
Absolutely.
And people want that.
Yeah.
And even if it's 5 minutes, it's so when you see somebody have it, and they haven't had that opportunity before, it's really, really cool to be part of and really special.
Absolutely.
And I wish we could do more of it. But yes, it takes a lot to get I know what the process that you're describing is one had been in place at Laughs for years.
Yeah.
Those little spots.
And I resonate with it completely because until I stopped doing, or I was forced to stop doing comedy because of COVID, and I couldn't show up to the club, and we'll talk more about how you navigated that challenge. I did not know I was using stand-up as my own therapy for myself. And I remember times when I've had great 5 minutes, great 20-minute sets at Laughs, and I was driving home like a king, I'm the best. This is the best life ever. And I've also cried back home when, I bombed terribly most of the times. So it's a process. And I think comedy means a lot to serious comedians who write their, life into it, and they feel like, and I think this kind of partnership helps both the club as well as the comedian. So thank you for creating a space. At least speaking for myself, it has been a turning point in my life, in my confidence, and everything that I do today comes from those 5 minutes of making 150 people laugh and giving like 10 laughs per minute and not all those metrics we talk about. And then talking about headliners that come up from outside of the state that don't understand your audience. You sometimes see that your spotlight does way better than your headliner. Yes. And then at the end of the show, the audience comes to you and they're like, man, you were great. You're going to have a special someday, even if you don't.
Yeah.
Right? That gives you so much hope in life. And I want to thank you and Dave for that opportunity. Speaking of professional stand-up comedians, now the headliner level, right? This is local. I was talking about someone doing it, at the spotlight level.
Sure.
How did that work? You graduate to your local club, start headlining in your local clubs, and then you tour around. And how did people see that as a career? How would one make a career out of that in the past, at least?
Well, Dave used to have like a feeder room where he had a Wednesday night room that had like an open mic up top where anybody could kind of go up or sign up, right? And then he would have the stronger of the comedians. So as they come every week, they would graduate to do a little bit longer sets, like what you just described. And then Dave would just say, okay, tonight, next week, you're going to do 45 minutes. And sometimes they would kind of panic, like, I don't know if I'm ready. And Dave goes, just push yourself. Just go up there and start talking. Or plan it out, or however their process is. So you start by headlining your own local, like a small space. And you start to build your time. And once you've built that time up where you have 45 minutes of strong material, you usually pair with somebody maybe on the road. So now you're pairing with the local headliner that's going to take you on the road as the featured performer. So you're doing 30 minutes. So you work the road. It has changed with social media, but that's how it was started. Like, okay, you go from Seattle doing 10 or 15 minutes, you go on the road, let's say to Montana or Spokane or the Tri-Cities in this market, and you're the feature set. And then hopefully you're running it up on the headliner, like you're funnier than the headliner. And so you start to think, wait a minute, you're getting those people after the show like, you know what, I liked your set better. Oh, I liked your set. So now you think, well, maybe I can stretch into that 45. Maybe the person that owns the venue is, coming back and saying, wait a minute, the opener was funnier. Maybe you reach out and book your own things. But once you've gotten to that, where you have that 45 minutes to an hour that you can headline, then you have to figure out how you're going to make it a career out of it. Are you going to drive across the country, or are you going to open up for somebody who's even bigger on the road? There's a lot of different avenues. And now creating your own content, everything has changed.
Absolutely.
Some people have skipped those steps.
Because I think a few more steps after that was, I'm tired of this road show. I'm too funny now. Maybe I'll write for, SNL on the side, right? Or maybe host a show like John Oliver or someone else. And that would be like a dream for a comedian or
well, I mean, maybe some, I don't think it's, that might be yours because that's what you resonates with you. But I find with comics that you don't always see. Somebody usually has an affection for one or the other. There are people that truly love going on the road.
Just live comedy.
They just love the rush of stand-up. They love traveling to different cities. They really, truly love the travel component of it and going to all these different cities.
Right.
They live for it.
Right.
And there's people that are like, I'd rather be a writer. I'd rather be on a show. I'd rather be an actor. This is a vehicle for these things. Or, there's people that honestly that do a lot of cruise ships.
Yeah.
Cruise ships pay now pretty well, I guess. So maybe they're like, I can just go on a boat for 2 weeks and make what I would make traveling the road for 2 months, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what the money looks like, but and then maybe they can stay home with a family. But it depends on what your priorities, or not priorities, or what you envision your life to look like. If you have a spouse and you're going to be on the road a lot, you have to have somebody pretty resilient at home and self-sufficient.
Absolutely.
When I met Dave, he had been a touring road comic and had traveled and performed every state west of the Mississippi, but he had been a military child, and he had moved 13 times. And when I asked him, like, don't you want to go on the road? I was thinking would be he's like, absolutely not. I said, what do you mean? He's like, no, I want to stay put. I want to stay here. I want to try to have a relationship. I want these things in my life, not the road. I don't want to pack up and travel. He already had done it as a child, so it didn't appeal to him. Yeah. So every person might come with a different perspective of what they're looking for. Some want to figure out how they're going to raise a family. And how are you going to raise a family if you're on the road 40 weeks a year? It's really interesting to hear what people are.
Makes sense, actually. You crave for things that you miss sometimes, and that decides what career path you choose. And coming to Laughs Comedy Club, now Dave being a traveling comic, and then he wanted some stability, but he didn't want to lose his touch with comedy. Is that something that was the inception of you guys, deciding to open a comedy club here in Washington, or it was by chance and it happened?
He had actually went to school for business and restaurant management, and so he thought about combining the two. Like that, you wonder if I could combine the two passions, my restaurant experience and my stand-up experience. Dave still, I guess he'll tell you, he's still stage fright after all these years.
Yeah.
People are still stage fright.
He has told me that, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of comics are stage fright. Even famous comics, they still get nervous to go on stage. So he loves to perform. I think he loves it, but I don't think he liked the idea of like travel to do it. So that this idea of like combining passions together.
Right.
And I think having a partner, when we met and we could do it together, he always said, I don't want to do it by myself. If you do it with me, we go to work every day together. I'm like, okay.
That is so sweet. That is so nice. I had no idea. I thought you were just, part of it. And
No.
Okay, so it was a pre-agreement.
Yeah, he said that we do it together. That's how we do this. We do it together, or we don't do it at all.
Wow.
And through the, the recovery for Dave, through this medical experience that he's had, one thing I always tell him, I said, you remember, you told me we do it together or we don't do it at all. So you got to come back, get strong again, and come back to the club because we do it together or we don't do it at all. And that's important, to have that other person by your, for us, everybody's different. For us, that's what works, to go there and be there together as a couple.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And you guys have done an amazing job in the last 2 decades, putting up 5,000 plus shows, hosting
That's crazy.
Probably every great headliner, national headliner that is on the road. I've personally had the fortune to spotlight for some times.
I want to set some ground rules here before we move forward, because this seems to happen a lot with me. One, please do not heckle with tough technical support questions. And two, after the show, let me know how did I resolve your issue.
I think it's just a beautiful place, and
Thank you.
I wish Dave all the best so that he can come back and bring some more life to the
Yes.
to the club and the business. Speaking of that, maybe coming back to your childhood a little bit, because we learned about Dave and what drives him, and you know
Yeah.
how you guys came into the business as a partnership. I've seen you, and something that impressed me a lot about you was the resilience that I saw, because I resonate with you in the terms where if I have a goal, I will do every possible task that is needed for me to be successfully achieving that goal, right? And we spoke about different roles that you've played. In fact, you've done different things outside of the club as well. How was your, childhood? You share an interesting and a very emotional story about your grandma and your great grandma. Would you mind, elaborating a little bit on how that impacted you and your resilience?
Yeah, both my parents worked full time, and so my grandmother often took care of me. And her story is she's also a Seattle native, and she was my great grandmother, her mother, had 13 kids. She was the second oldest, and this would have been right before the Depression. So she would be, late 1930s. And her mom died beside her on Mother's Day, and she was only 16 years old, and she was the second oldest. Her older brother had enlisted in the military and was gone, so my grandmother entered foster care, as well as all of her younger siblings entered foster care. And when you're a kid, you don't know what foster care means. You don't know what the Depression means. You don't know what World War II looks like.
Yeah.
But my grandmother, raised my mom and my aunt, and really just instilled a lot of how to take care of yourself. That's it. So she sewed a lot of her own clothes. She made her own. They canned all their. They had a garden, so they did a lot of canning, dehydrating food, just making everything from scratch. And so if you needed something, you had to make it or get it. There was no fabricate it, right? You couldn't just go to a store. I didn't even know.
Amazon it.
I didn't even know people had credit cards.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you
Wow.
could buy a car on credit. I thought everybody had to earn what they could get. So it's if you wanted something, if I wanted something at the store, my mom would say, well, how are you going to pay for it? I'm like, oh, that's a fascinating question. So I would try to figure out how I'm going to earn enough money to buy something. And so I never really thought there was another way of life. I thought if you had it, nothing is given. So you have to try to figure out a way. I started babysitting when I was 11 years old, for the neighbors, for my, whoever would let me work there. I was so when we opened the club, I didn't know anything about restaurant management. I didn't know anything about hiring employees. I didn't know how to work a commercial kitchen. I didn't know about finance. I didn't know any of this stuff. So each spot, I was like, could I learn that particular job? That way I could do it if I needed to. So I learned how to, use QuickBooks. I taught myself how to use QuickBooks. I learned how to, manage payroll. And the hardest part has been, being a leader.
Yeah.
That's one thing that people, I was not really taught, because my parents all were employed. No one was self-employed in my family. So being a leader is the hardest ongoing task. The other stuff can be taught. You can kind of learn, okay, open up this book and it's going to teach you about QuickBooks, or you're going to open up this and they're going to tell you all there is to know about payroll.
Yeah.
But management and being a leader is the hardest.
Yeah. For some people, it
task.
comes naturally. Did you think that you had natural traits of leadership? It's just the situation that didn't let you sort of practice it?
No,
Or?
I don't know. I feel like I'm too trusting. And so Dave's a little bit better and more natural leader and more
Balanced.
yeah, he's more like, so we each play our own roles, but that's my new focus, is just to really, you know, I've learned over the years that the greatest asset that we have in our business is people. Everything that we're doing now after COVID, it was a real eye-opener. Everything is related to people. We need our customers, we need our comics, we need our staff. It's all people driven. Yeah. It's not machine, cannot be replaced with AI bots. These are each part of it requires a live human being to be there. And if you don't treat everybody with dignity and respect, it falls apart. It's like a perfect triangle. You have to have all three of those things.
Yeah.
And you have to be good to all of them, or it collapses.
I agree with you. And you did share some more private events that sort of were a turning point in your independent self coming out, which was the only time that you left your sweet state of Washington and lovely city of Seattle.
Yeah.
Would you want to
Well,
share?
like every story, I moved across the country for a boy. Following your heart, right? And heartbroken, and ended up in Florida by myself. And it was...
How old were you, if you don't...
Yeah, I was 25. But I never went to college, so it was a good experience. It was horrible and wonderful all at the same time. You know, just knowing that there's nobody. This is before video call. You know, before the internet. We had the internet, but you couldn't really just like, you know, see somebody on Zoom. It's not like you could have a conversation with someone. So you had to, you know, call someone, and also, you know, I felt like a failure because I moved across the country for something that didn't work out. Yeah. So, you know, it was heartbreaking, but I just powered through, you know, and found out a little bit more about myself. You know, it was, I didn't even know, how do you make friends in a city that you don't know anyone? And I worked in an office with like 2 women, both of them that were having affairs with other people. They're both married, and a boss that wouldn't even give me a look. I mean, he wouldn't even look at me sideways.
Wow.
It was not a nice person. So I'm like, I'm not going to make friends with these people.
Right.
Well, for one, the women didn't have time for me. They were
Right.
having affairs.
Right.
Hang out with
Sorry,
me.
Angela. I got like 2 guys to take care of.
Listen. So it was, you know, a patient took me in for Thanksgiving dinner, which was always like something that was, she's like, walked in, she's like, what
patient, you were working in
I was working in
dentist
dentistry,
office.
and a lady came in and she was a patient. She goes, what are you going to do? And I said, I think I'm going to like volunteer at a homeless shelter or something. Because I mean, my work ethic was just kicking in. Like, what am I going to do for Thanksgiving? You know, everyone's off. It's 4 days.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit in my apartment for 4 days. And we didn't have cable.
Yeah.
I had one channel. I had CBS.
Wow.
I'm going to watch CBS for 4 days. So I said,
I thought that was the worst part of the story. I'm just
yeah, it really was. I said I was going to volunteer at like a homeless shelter, like a food kitchen, and she goes, these are very, it was like a very posh area of Florida that I lived in, and she goes, oh my God, and she goes, you're not going to a homeless shelter, you're coming with me to my house, and also my son, I don't like his girlfriend, so I'm going to try to hook you guys up. And I'm like, oh my God, this sounds horrible. So I had Thanksgiving dinner with her.
This is a full package, okay.
Yeah, her son and his girlfriend and a priest. I didn't even know priests could drink. I didn't know, it was like he kept drinking wine. I thought it was the most bizarre.
So was the priest there to get you guys married right on the spot? If he likes you and you guys are like...
This guy was not into me. It was hilarious. And like another random person. But I mean, it was really like, okay, that's my first... What do I do? Yeah. Well, the kindness of strangers, you know, okay, you're going to have a family dinner. You're going to sit down and be part of this. And yeah, it was, I just ended up joining a church, and I found a group of people that were my age, and they're like, well, so what are you doing? I go, well, I have no friends, And so if you're looking for a friend, I can devote myself to you completely. And one of the first girls I met there, actually, and we're still friends. She lives in Florida, but I had a lot of people actually come to me and they're like, I heard you're looking for friends. I'm like,
my
well,
God,
you're number 10 now. Sorry. I already have number 1. She gets all my attention. I've already promised her. So I just actually used humor to kind of like break the ice. Even back then, I was, I think I'm a funny person.
Yes.
And even though I don't do stand-up, I just used humor to kind of like, okay, I can be a wallflower. I can just really put myself out there and just tell people, okay, I'm looking for friends.
That's amazing. And what are some of the things that you learned about yourself through that experience that helped you be as strong as, I know you or others know you here in Seattle?
Well, pretty much, I know that I can do it. I can find a way. Fortitude. I learned that I like to be around people. I'm not a hermit crab. And that it's okay to do something that's scary, take a risk. I don't like to take a lot of risks. Dave's more of a risk taker, I think. So just trying to push myself out of my boundaries. I'm like, okay, I can do this. That's what, just to push myself. That's what I can, that I am stronger than I thought.
Right.
And I had really, good experiences. There's a lot of people that would have, women that have had traumatic experiences, and I had positive experiences, but I'm also I don't take a lot of risks, so I don't put myself in risky situations, staying out late or, I'm not one for a lot of vices.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get myself into too many predicaments, luckily.
That's awesome. And I've seen you drive out drunk hecklers off Laughs Comedy Club, so that's where you draw the line of risk-taking, probably.
Well, that's because they'll put, people don't like confrontation. And so if my staff has to do that, then if I put my staff in that situation where they have to be confrontational, and that's about being a good leader. It's stepping up and doing something that you can't ask someone else to do something that you wouldn't do. You can't say, well, go do that. Someone threw up in the bathroom. Who's going to clean it up?
Right.
Well, I'm going to clean it up. Because when I ask the next person to clean it up, I can say, well, I did it last time. Now it's your turn.
Yeah.
I'm not above it, but now it's your turn.
So going back to all the nice things that have happened, right? So Laughs has also hosted the NBC auditions in 2019, which I was part of as well. Fantastic experience, and
I stole that show.
You did. You have a story?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You wanna hear?
Share more.
So they were supposed to be at the Parlor Live.
Yes.
And
in Bellevue.
Yes, in Bellevue, and they had. We got an email from somebody on their staff at the Parlor Live, and they said, listen, I need a new job because this place is going out of business. I'm like, what? It's going out of business. And so I went through their schedule and looked at all the shows, and I thought, which shows do I want? Because if they're closing, I mean, nobody's going to lie about that. I'm like, this has to be true. So I called someone that I thought would know the NBC people, and they did. And they said, I'll give you connections. So I sent an email to NBC and explained, and they said, well, we don't know about that. As far as we know, the show is going on. And I said, well, let's say it doesn't happen there. Will you come to Laughs in Seattle? And they said, yes, we'll come once we know. But we're expecting it to go on. Well, of course, they close. I'm right. Dave and I are right. We saw it, and I just had already picked off those shows. And so they called. We were ready to go. And so they brought the audition to our club. And, of course, I immediately got crazy phone calls from, like, what you said earlier, like, my friends say I'm funny. Yeah. Because they did an open casting call.
Yes, they did.
And we had a couple of, like, really kooky people. So they actually hired security for the line because I was so concerned about the people that were going to come in there. And anyways, it was a great experience. It was really fun, and really a lot of women involved in stand up on the higher levels, and so it was fun to meet them and see what they were looking for. Yeah, it was a great show.
That was amazing because what an amazing story, by the way, to be a jack of all that does everything for the business, and to be smart enough, right? It's all about timing, and it's all about opportunities and things like that. And that brings me to another thing that I wanted to discuss. I was born and raised in India. You've seen some of my comic bits, and I talk a lot about that. And when I used to interact with a lot of Seattle-based American comedians, they would say, I don't know when I can go, make my move to LA. And I used to ask them, why do you want to move to LA? And they're like, NBC auditions and whatnot, and different competitions, it's a higher stage, etc. And I used to always think, like, for me, this is everything. Because, I never even imagined that I would be in America. And to have a club in Seattle and to be, performing their 4 shows on the weekend right before the headliner was like a big deal. And then to have NBC come in, I was like, things are turning around for us. And, that makes us so hopeful. And this is a business of hope. But then again, this is also a business where things are not constant all the time. Coming to COVID-19 hit all of us out of nowhere. And, different businesses have different impacts, especially small business like yours, which entirely relies on a bunch of people sitting close to each other, eating and, breathing the same air. How was that experience, and how did you even keep your business alive through that to today?
Well, it was, hopefully once in a lifetime experience. Let's start there. And so, how do we keep our life? Well, we used basically our savings, if you will, to keep the business alive. I thought it was going to be shorter. And we all thought it was going to be shorter, or that we could pivot in some way, do something outdoors. But the frustration was that it was not constant across the country. So every state had its own set of rules, which made it very complicated. So things did not change in Oklahoma. They were exactly the same. Whereas here, we could not have live entertainment inside or outside. How did we survive was our building is independently owned, not by a corporation. So it's a family basically that owns our building, and they are in a position where they could not accept payment for the rent. And I think that would be probably the key of why we're still there, is that we could negotiate something. We have a very good lawyer that Dave's no longer than I've known Dave, and he was helpful with he has a lot of small businesses, gyms. It was the other thing that he has as clients. So he worked really hard and at almost like no fee to help his clients negotiate, like, what are we going to do? The government grants came very late, and we had to live through all of it to get that recovery that they had set up. It moved very slowly. And the other thing is I was still working in dentistry, so I just kept going to and then we only worked 4 days a week in dentistry. I worked at a job 4 days a week, and I had Mondays off, and I found another place that was another dental office that was open on Mondays, and I went there on Mondays because I thought, even if I can something, I mean, I still had to pay the phone bill. We still had to pay our electricity, our, little things that you don't think of that
probably
just
insurance.
Oh
like
God,
that.
the insurance. The insurance was crazy. Yeah, they wanted us to have liquor liability, and they said because we still had liquor inside of our building, we had to carry liability insurance. I said, okay, great. I'll go down there right now, and I'll take out all the liquor, and I'll bring it to my house, and I'll lock it up in a cabinet. I'm like, there'll be no liquor there. Like, they were just, but it wasn't. the insurance company's fault. They just didn't know how to pivot or navigate. They just had never, no one
There
had.
was no rule book.
Yeah, no one knew what to say. I mean, the phone company was like, okay, your phone, we shut off the internet. We don't need internet. Like all those little things. We had a lot of help from comics that just sent us cash to see if they could like help in some sort of way. Like, what could we do to help something that we love and want to be part of and see it come back? That, you know, that people came down and tried to buy stuff from the club. Like, what do we have? I gained 20 pounds because I was eating the hamburgers that we had left over.
Oh, wow.
I mean, like trying to like figure out where we could.
I remember you even opened the outdoors when it was allowed with 50 people as a minimum.
No,
And
we were never
you
allowed.
were not allowed to do
we
that?
were not allowed to open outdoors. It was only for about a week that there was no live entertainment inside or outside. Some places, California, they had outdoor, but we never had outdoor. It was they were talking about letting us, and then they shut it down. And it was rightfully so, because you're going to ask people. There was people that didn't care. When we reopened at 25%, which that's what we reopened with 50 people. When we reopened with that, you know, we couldn't even get comics to come in from out of state because they didn't want to perform for 50 people. So what are we going to do? No one's performed in Washington for a year. So all of our comics were rusty. It's like, and some of them didn't even want to come back.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to work on stage in a mask? You're going to tell jokes in a mask? Like, how's this going to work? Like, it was...
I remember you guys had booties at one point of time,
Yes.
which I used to put on the mic, and then...
Yeah, we had,
you
we
remember
had microphone, little coverings. Yeah, we had those.
Wow.
We removed the front row. We had COVID tests for the staff. We all wore masks as a staff, and it was just... I mean, staffing was difficult. I mean, we didn't know what to expect. The first night we opened with Andrew Frank as the headliner, February 6th of 2021. We opened the doors after being closed for 11 months could sell 50 tickets. It was sold out. And people were like so excited. I was like, I didn't know what to even prepare. We couldn't even I mean, they drank so much alcohol. We had to hire 18-year-olds because no one would work.
Yeah.
So we had 18-year-old kids that didn't have the unemployment package because they never had worked before. And they were running this. The customers ran that staff ragged. These poor 18-year-old kids were trying to bring drinks to the table, and people were like, more alcohol. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys haven't been out of the house. But they were so excited. It was it was a hopefully never to be repeated again. Really surreal experience. But we found our footing. It just took a while.
A lot of things changed because of that, outside of that.
Yes.
Just in general in the entertainment industry, because what you're describing is no stranger to films and theaters and, you know, any kind of live performance art that changed forever. And then social media came up, and, you know, some of the comedians that I know, they actually moved over to doing only social media, and they found some success. Some of them are very successful as well in comparison. Did you feel like comedy went back, or at least your business went back to what it was earlier, or that was a permanent mark in live comedy?
I actually think that live comedy is more popular than it's ever been. I think we came back with a vengeance because of COVID. First, multiple reasons. A, people could discover stand-up at home very quickly on the internet. So now they had time. They're at home. They're watching stuff. So old things that hadn't been looked at or gone through, like old comedy specials, people could look at, because there's only so much Tiger King we could all watch, right? And then as an art, we came back faster than anybody, because stand-up is just one person and a camera. You don't even need very many people in the audience. So in those little rooms where there's 50 people, and you could have one camera, and you could be on Instagram the next day. So it was one of the few, no bands were touring the summer of 2021. There was no place to go, but they couldn't get the tours ready. Nobody had been filming. Filming had come to a pretty, like a standstill,
standstill, actually.
right?
Yeah, for a
and
long
then we had
time.
the writers' strike.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of different things going on at the same time that kind of, and people realized that they liked to be in a room and laugh and were appreciative of all those things that go into it. That human interaction, to be able to come. I think stand-up is a great thing that you can come by yourself, technically. I mean, like, a lot of people come alone. I mean, it's
they do.
like a movie.
Absolutely. And I think you're right when you say, because when I did perform for some time after COVID, before I actually stopped and forayed into, different art form, I did see a lot of audience member coming in saying, I saw you on Instagram, I saw you on TikTok, which was not a thing that you would hear before that. They would walk into a club because their friends are going to watch a comedy show, and that's how they would discover someone. But now there was a marketing element, or a, what do you call, an avenue for the comedian as well as the club, right? Did your marketing change after that, like the way you promoted your shows and things?
Definitely.
Yeah.
We're looking at more social media type advertising than we had before. People that can get an audience to come through social media, and we just recently added our own cameras so that we can help those newer artists with production, because it's hard to produce your own things. The cameras and all the splitters and all the stuff are expensive. So that equipment, to have someone like come and film your set for the weekend professionally, there's a cost to it. So I wonder if we could take that and take it on as a club, as an investment, and then in turn be able to give people something, which is kind of our next adventure in comedy, is
Amazing,
to
yeah.
figure out how to make that studio component for people.
For a while, I thought that traditional stand-up comedy was sort of on a decline from the comics point of view, and people were doing more of roasts. And you've seen some success with the Tech Roast show. Some of the local comedians had put together. They're doing really well outside now.
Sure.
What was your view of comedy transitioning from, say, a single person with a mic to, like, bunch of comics on stage and just having fun and putting that out on the internet for millions of others to see and things like that?
Well, I think I like the Tech Roast show. I think that they've done a really great job with it. Of course, there are unique people, and there's other, like Kill Tony has this like roast component to it, and that's been around a long time. That just has never been filmed before. I mean, there was the Friars roast, there was the Comedy Central roast.
Yeah,
so
the roast.
That concept has been around a long time. I just think now that the format is easier to kind of do, because again, we have all the cameras that we didn't have access to before, and the editing equipment. So it's been around a while. I like roast shows when they're done well. I think they're fun if everybody's on board for it. And it's always interesting. We're also seeing more live podcasts at the club, and there's a lot of different things it's all fun. I mean, any way that you can make people connect on a human level and they can come and laugh and enjoy themselves, well, let's go for it. We're having a show next week that's part burlesque dancers and pole dancers and comics in between. So, and people that follow burlesque or follow pole dancing, they may not be as familiar with stand-up. So now we're introducing the two together. So it's, it was fun. I just have never seen that many dancers in our club.
So when you innovate like this, and I have performed in one of the shows, not at your club but outside, where there was a burlesque artist as well as one comedian and someone else doing something else, playing an instrument, things like that, a variety show, if I may.
Variety show.
But when you innovate like this, how do you know, or how are you sure that this is going to work, or it's actually a test, just you're just experimenting?
Now I don't take as many risks with that, because if it was just me personally, I'll take a risk, but I have now staff and overhead. And so if someone has a show concept that they have done in other rooms, they'll usually, I'll hear about it, or they'll come to me like, I've outgrown my room. And that's how this market works. Like we are a certain number of seats. So we only compete with the same number of seats. So if somebody has a show and it's seated and they're in a room they're selling out 100 seats, they're ready to move on. But when they sell, but I always tell comics, I'm not a hater, I'm a congratulator. If you want to, I hope that every comic that we work with becomes wildly famous and is at a theater that seats 5,000 people.
Yeah.
I would be so happy for everybody.
Yeah.
But while they can sell as many seats as we have, we want them with us, and then when they're ready to move on, they move on. And so that show that's in particular, she has been at 3 or 4 different venues. It has grown in popularity, so she needed a new space. She put a lot of work into the show, and when I saw the workload that the work she put in, and the return on her investment was small because she didn't have enough seats. So if we can do that for her, and she can have a larger return on her investment for her work, then that is success. And also we're giving, she had like 20 performers, and all of them are, making people laugh, making people have a good time, and also, getting compensated. And that's important, that you can be compensated for your art.
Absolutely.
In some way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for sharing that. One interesting bit you shared with me, and this goes back to my understanding that once a comedian, always a comedian, but life happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just cannot, because it's hard, right? You live far away, you have some obligations, either you have a job, you have a sick person at home, whatnot, and you're not able to do comedy for maybe a few years. But then life changes back and you're like, okay, maybe I should go back again, but things have already changed.
Yes.
How does that change, and how does one know, and what are some stories that you can share in which one could understand that a break means also for you to understand how the industry or the situation has evolved so that you could, go back and get what you want, but in a different way then?
Well, I think that nostalgia plays a part with it. People think, they look back at their time. There's a lot of people that did stand up or have tried stand up, and they may have seen that it's a good time for them, a feeling, and maybe they don't forget the crying in their car on the way home, but they remember that, again, it's a dopamine rush, and so they think they're going to come back. Well, first of all, the material has changed. So what you're talking about, has to be reworked. So if you started stand up in your 20s and you're talking about being single and dating, well, those
dating is hard.
Yeah.
Dating is.
But like Dave has jokes that are really old that that are hilarious, that the point of reference has changed. He's like, I've been listening to, one of his jokes is, I've been listening to subliminal weight loss tapes to lose weight. And he goes, I just find them crunchy and not too filling. But we think about the subliminal weight loss tape, like no one, first of all, I said, Dave, he's like, how do I, we were like roundtabling that discussion, like, how do you update this joke?
Yeah.
So he tried, like, I've been listening to subliminal MP3s. I can't, we're still living in the past.
Subliminal podcast. Now I don't know.
But you start to think, and he's also like, wait a minute, he's not single anymore. He's going to have to talk about where his life is now. You're competing with people. The audience is younger than maybe you remember.
Yes.
It's harder. You're starting. No one remembers who you are. So you're trying to... you probably have a list of 5 or 6 people that you know of from when you did stand-up. And those people are in different places in their lives, right? And they're in different places with their comedy, if they're still doing comedy. Yeah. So your friend group has changed. So it was kind of like the comedy club is like Cheers. Yeah. Like you come back and everyone knows your name, right? Like when you come every week, everyone knows you. Yeah. You know the bartender. Even if you don't drink, you know who the host is. You know who you're going to see in the back of the room, and you have your own little clique. Yeah, and they all know what set he's going to do or she's going to do. Yes. What is the punchline when it is coming, whether it's going good or not. Wow. Yeah. So to come back, and I think again, living in that nostalgia, you come back thinking this is what it's going to be, and then usually it's an epic fail.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to tell somebody. That's the hard part of our job, to tell someone who's had success, like, this isn't working. You're going to have to start from scratch. And often, to see the road, it'd be kind of like going to the gym and you were a bodybuilder and you haven't worked out for 5 years and you pick up the weight and go, okay, crashes to the floor. I mean, it's more visual in that sense, but it's harder. It's hard to come back.
Absolutely.
It's really hard. You have to come back with a whole new focus and dedication. And I think people go, wait a minute, this took a lot of work last time, and I'm going to get to that level. Do you have the time? Do you want to put that time and dedication in where you are now in your life? And some people, maybe their kids are grown. They've gotten gotten out of that hard year, and now they're like, okay, I'm going to go, back to doing stand-up. I enjoyed that part of my life, and I have something I want to share and something I want to express. But then they realize, wait, they're not who they were in their 20s. They're not up to staying out.
Yeah.
Going on last at the comedy club, you're there at 11, right?
Absolutely. I remember. Yeah.
You're there late, you're getting home, and, it's just, your body isn't as resilient, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's just like, well, I'm going to really do this.
And most comedians have to rely on a full-time job in the morning that they have to show up to.
Yes.
And if you are like going home at like 11:30, like I did as well, so many nights I remember going back home at 11:30, 12, and then waking up 6 a.m. in the morning for another meeting and whatnot, and it gets really hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's really hard. Really, really hard.
And we spoke about hardships in life happening to comedians. At least comedians have a choice to not go to the club or leave comedy, like, but coming to the comedy club, life also happens to the club owners. And you mentioned Dave, have had to deal with a lot of, health-related episodes and, events in his life. How did you guys, never come to a point where you're like, let's, hang the towel now, and, you want to share more about Dave's struggles of, being away from comedy and how he feels about that?
That's his life, right? We don't have kids, so it's been hard because when you're in that kind of setting, it's your social circle, and it's your business, and you're the leader. You're a lot of things rolled into one in this club, if you will, because we're running kind of two separate businesses in a sense. You've got the comics and the stage, and then you also have the restaurant side of things. And so it starts to be, there used to be a saying, like, first all your friends come to see you perform, and then you realize all your friends are performing. So it's been a really, and then being the person that has to be the person, when you're in charge, you have to have tough conversations with people. I mean, we have a lot of people bring their life into the club. We used to see more comics that drink, but out of control behavior, behavior towards other people that's not acceptable. And so you kind of have to be the boss.
Did you have to call cops or at some instances? Any kind of stories like that where you had to deal with something that you were not prepared for, or did not expect to happen?
It feels like every day. I would not say as much with comics per se. I mean, maybe a few comedians. I had a guy, back in Kirkland, had somebody come up to us and say, Dave said, listen, you can't go on stage. I don't know what he was saying. It was inappropriate. And he goes, who are you to decide what's funny?
Oh.
I said, Wells Fargo told us, because that's how we had to start our business, with a loan and a 100-page document and all this stuff to put down in paper. So yes, it's really hard. We've had we had a guy expose himself on stage. We've had people say things that they should not say. That's my opinion. I get free speech. I understand it, but you don't want to yell fire in a crowded theater. And yeah, it's really uncomfortable. I mean, I've had to call the police on, crazy customers, but hopefully never on I've had a couple of touch and go incidents with comics, but I think with the internet, it's been a little easier because, now people can't have that crazy behavior that they used to have. They're being filmed, they're being watched.
Yeah.
Someone wants to, say something to them, right? But it's always a little bit, you don't know what someone's up to.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
better just to, yeah.
It's a very stressful business. I do appreciate everything that you do, and for the last 2 decades, you and Dave both, because every night is different.
Yeah, every night is different.
The permutation and combinations are crazy because you have 150 people or whatever your seating is,
Yeah.
and then you have that number of comics, and anything can go anywhere, and that can
staff.
drive you insane. Yeah, and then staff, and some days they're there, some days they're not there. And I remember at some point even like comics were like setting tables. I remember myself doing that because we wanted to have a great show. We wanted the club to be successful and things like that. And one thing that I have seen you and Dave, and this is my perception only, so please disconfirm if you will. I think you guys do a great job of taking a break.
Oh,
No
yeah.
matter what, and you guys actually come really refreshed after that break to deal with all the nonsense that goes on in your business. Do you agree? And how does that help?
Yeah, I think we live we live kind of a simple life. We're not extravagant people, but we do like to get away with each other. I think it's important to connect outside. I think it gives you perspective. We just actually got back from Portland where we went to Helium Comedy Club and saw a
Yes.
show, and I think it's always great to see how you always can benefit and learn. You can always be learning. And so when you go to someone else's place and see how they run their business, how the show goes, be a fly on the wall, that's always great. So we love to travel and see shows in other parts of the country because it's a real eye-opener, what their audiences laugh at.
Yeah.
And so we like to combine some things, and then we like to also just do like a regular vacation where it's not about comedy, where you can just decompress, and also just just hear, like we were in Mexico back in January and I went to the pool, and just hearing people talk about politics in the pool, what they were talking about. I mean, I'm not isolated in Seattle to hear just this point of view, but it's always good to hear what other people are talking about in the country, what things are on people's minds, and to travel. And then also going somewhere outside the U.S., you can see how that country operates and how their people connect to tourists.
Yeah.
And it makes you grateful for what we have here too, the opportunities that are here, because there's a lot of hardworking people in this world.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And coming to the last bit, what holds in the store for Laughs Comedy Club and you and Dave in the future?
Well, my goal this year is to kind of like take with Dave's coming back. It just refocused us on ourselves, our physical selves, and our spiritual well-being and our mental well-being. So this year I quit my day job in dentistry, so I'm now with Dave and at Laughs full time, and so I'm dedicated to my personal health, because we only have this one body. I got to take care of it so that I can be there and enjoy what we built. I kind of see us, Dave's, probably getting closer to retirement, so he has a smaller amount of time left than I do, right? And so we really want to enjoy, I call it enjoying what we built. The years of sacrifice, the years of struggle, we're now want to enjoy that part, and being good leaders and good stewards of our business, and just really think about what we can do to propel the business forward and leave a lasting legacy for comedy. And so that's why we bought the cameras and installed the cameras, so that we can have like some sort of a digital memory of what we've put together, and also something for the comics to have to use. So that's what's in store for us. We just want to get better and healthier, and just be the best people we can be for Seattle comedy. And we always want our club to be like where people say, you know what, I left Seattle, I left Laughs, and I had a great experience. They go back to their home city, usually New York or LA, and share great things about, that was a great club. You guys
Yeah.
should all go there.
Yeah.
And it's always crazy, the people that are like, I'm going to refer so-and-so to you. And I'm like, please do. I would love to have Michael Che. He hasn't come yet.
Yeah.
But, like something like that. Or,
Yeah.
Sometimes, it's just fun to see what people, that they had such a good time. That's a big compliment, to refer your friends and family either to perform or to see a show.
Yeah, even though I never headlined, Laughs Comedy Club will always be my home club.
The day's not over yet.
Yeah, I know. I will be back someday. But one last bit I want to ask you is, what would be your advice or, general through your experience for a couple or maybe women who are looking or listening to you right now, and they want to foray into business that they are passionate about but they don't know much about, just like you did. And I think you and Dave did a fantastic job running a successful club for so many years. What are some things that they should be aware of, and how should they go about that, whether it's a club or anything else that they want to do?
I think to trust your own instincts, that gut instinct that you have, trust it, because there are many times where I've wrestled with a decision or not sure what to do, and I think ultimately I have a little bit of anxiety always, so at that little piece that says do what's right or do this because it will be best, don't be impulsive. I think taking risks are good, but impulsiveness is not good, and that has I think that's gotten me into trouble, to be impulsive, to just sit back, and wait a little bit, just give it a second and take a pause.
Yeah.
And that would be my advice to anybody to start a business, is just, have a plan. Don't think, okay, I'm going to do this or that, write a business plan. I always tell people, start with your mission statement. And write your mission statement. I still remember our first mission statement from 20 years ago. It should be updated, but I remember the fundamentals, and I always come back to that when I think about what we want to do with our business. And that fundamental was always a couple. For us, it was a couple that planned a night out. And how do they start? How does that process start? They're looking to be entertained. What does that look like? They're at home. How does, from A to B. And so if you're starting your business, it's like, think about the customer or your product, or how that someone's going to help somebody, and really walk through it in their footsteps. How are they going to find out about you? How are they going to make this plan? How are they going to use your product? It has to be from the other person. But yeah, those are my advice, tips.
I'm so inspired by...
You're going to have to write a mission statement.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing that. And I feel like I typically guess about my guests that they are jack of alls, and that's how I invite them. But through the show, everything that we spoke about made me, very convinced that you're a true jack of all. You're true to your mission, and you did everything possible in your, right to be able to continue to be on that path. And not just that, you did not just impact your own life or Dave impact your life, but thousands of people who came to the show, enjoyed, maybe that one night changed something in them, maybe it gave them what they were looking for. And on the comedian side, I think a lot of comedians have used that platform for their own growth. So thank you so much for presenting a platform that was very accepting of different people, different cultures. I think I also at some point felt protected to be who I was, and be accepted, so that I was confident in what I was doing, so that I could be true to my mission. Yeah. And I think that did feed into whatever I'm doing today and my own journey. So thank you, Angela. And I wish Dave was here as well someday, maybe soon. Yeah. But I wish you, Dave, and Laughs Comedy Club all the best. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.